Good morning, everybody. Thanks for showing up for today's press conference after Tuesday night's um, City Council meeting. We appreciate everybody being here, those of you who are tuning in. We got several things to talk about today, and I look forward to answering everybody's questions. A couple things I want to make announcements if y'all give me a few minutes. There's some important things going on in Columbus I want to remind our citizens about. Through tomorrow, February the 4th, there'll be free COVID-19 drive-through testing at the health department. I shouldn't say testing, but yeah, I guess it is testing. And I think you can also possibly get shots too. The health department is at the intersection of Warpath and Lindbergh Road. And again, there's no charge for that, so that's through tomorrow. I know it's testing, but it could possibly be vaccinations too, but you'll need to double check on that. Tell them the mayor sent you. Maybe they'll do it. I mentioned a few list of events from last night. I'd like to go over those again real quickly. I want to remind everybody that February is Black History Month, and our citizens are encouraged to attend all community programs and school functions and events that highlight the importance of this month. One event that I mentioned last night that and I've mentioned a couple other times that I want to mention again, is the exhibit that opens up tomorrow night at the Trotter Convention Center, which is the O.N. Pruitt's Possumtown exhibit, photographing trouble and resilience in the American South. This book is by Berkeley Hudson, who is a professor emeritus in journalism from the University of Missouri. He is a native Colombian. He's from Columbus originally. These photographs were taken by a local photographer who was able to get some amazing images, primarily from the Columbus area, that documented what was going on here during that time. I really think there's a lot that we, as citizens of Columbus, can learn from this. I'm very proud that they chose to use Columbus as the opening of this national tour. It will be in Columbus through April the 23rd. There will also be, during that time, and again, tomorrow night is the opening exhibit. Berkeley will be there, along with other Colombians who helped him purchase this. I think it's over 80,000 negatives, I think. And they've been working on this for quite some time. So this is a big deal. It's going to tour the country. I've mentioned before that I think this can be a wonderful tool for our community in dealing with race relations, which is a very important topic. I believe that Columbus can be a leader in that role, and I'm hoping that people will take the time to find out more about the book, hopefully come tomorrow night for the opening, and then also go back and tour the exhibit many times and really study these photographs and try to get an understanding of what the citizens of Columbus were dealing with during this time. Also, I want to mention that on Monday, February the 7th at 6 p.m. in the lower level of the Trotter, we will have our first, or probably maybe, we're going to do more than one, just one, for our master plan for Probst Park. Kevin Stafford and the guys from Neil Schaefer have been tasked with a survey of our citizens, trying to get input on what we could do potentially in the future for Probst Park. This is very important to our community. We will be in the lower level so we can social distance. We're wearing a mask will be required. That is city property. And so we hope for a good turnout, but we'll also be streaming it live, correct, Joe? So that people can tune in. And again, this is very important that we get community feedback on this. So I highly encourage you to attend or send someone in your stead. Another important thing that happened, we were notified that we have been approved by Mississippi Department of Transportation for $1 million grant, a little over $1 million grant for a project that the city has been interested in for quite some time, beginning at 5th Street in downtown Columbus, and I believe going to 9th. Is that correct, Kevin? Correct. This is Commissioner John Caldwell called me, our Northern District Highway Commissioner. I can't thank him enough for working with the city on this. Kevin and his team helped us get this proposal in. We worked very hard to try to get this grant, and I think it'll have a great impact on the community. I think it will also lend itself to possible other grants for more improvements in that area, and not just in this part of in that part of town, but throughout the city. So we'll be giving more information on that in the coming days. In fact, Kevin is here, and I'm going to ask him to come up and talk just a little bit more about it.
This project is going to span, for those in Columbus that are familiar with the Magnolia Bowl, it'll start at 5th Avenue along 5th Street, run north all the way to 9th Avenue. So that corridor right now, the roadway is really wide. All the lanes are beyond minimum standards for a roadway width. It promotes speeding. There's no pedestrian or bicycle accommodations in that area. And as most know, the downtown area and this front door of the community has started to revitalize itself through the soccer complex back in 2012 to the Burns Bottom renovations that are potentially going to happen with the redevelopment authority right now. And this is just that next step to put a better facelift, a better foot forward for our downtown. So it's a big step also in connecting our pedestrian connectivity between the Riverwalk, the soccer complex, our downtown system of sidewalks, and eventually we would love to follow Morris Creek all along and across 5th Street, all the way up to 18th Avenue and further north for that matter. So it fits a lot of the master planning that we have with the city for accommodation of, again, pedestrians, bicyclists, and mainly also it will help calm traffic in that area, which has been an issue as well. So.
Again, I noticed that some folks, when we announced this, there were some questions and concerns about why we weren't focusing money in other areas and things like that. And obviously, there's many needs in the city. And so right now, we're trying to be more proactive in writing grants in areas where they're available. There was money available for a project like this, so we pursued it. Did you want to say something else?
I failed to mention that this is a TAP grant, TAP, Transportation Alternative Program money that comes from state DOT, and it can only be used to improve off-road facilities, so such as pedestrians and bicyclists. It just so happened to be in this case that 5th Street Road and traffic calming also qualifies because traffic calming helps protect the pedestrians and cyclists. So we were able to kind of get the road improved while also mainly helping accommodate the pedestrian need in this corridor. So that's why this grant is specific to the needs of the pedestrians and cyclists in this area and can't be used just anywhere along the city for potholes and other means. This grant would not have qualified for that. So I just want to make that clarification.
Thank you, Kevin. I appreciate that very much, and we'll take any more questions on that later, and we'll be coming forth with more information as it becomes available in our progress in that area. One of the things that also I wanted to touch on that is very important to me, and with everything else that was being talked about last night, I'm not sure if everybody got a clear understanding. When we have input from our citizens, I take that very seriously, and I appreciate it when people take the time to call in or come to the meetings. And last night, Ms. Joyce Doty came in to talk about some concerns she has about our social media policy. And I very much respect her concerns. We really wanted to try to address that in a forthright way. I may let Joe and Jeff speak to this too a little bit. What the concern has been is that when we post on the mayor's Facebook page, Joe Dillon is primarily the one that does the post for us. And there have been a couple times when posts had to come down for various reasons, for mistakes in them, and when they went back up, comments that people had put before, in a couple of cases, have disappeared, which is very strange. We are trying to explain there's a lot of different ways that Facebook, you can have your filters set up to possibly not show the comments. We don't have that. That's not our intent. It seems like there's been some mistakes where that's happened, and we apologize for that, and it surely wasn't our intent. So in that discussion last night, it was brought up about whether or not we should use that site as just an information location, not having feedback from the community. The council took a vote on that because, and I'm going to let Jeff speak to this too if he will, because even in the prior administration there was some recommendations that maybe we just do it that way, and I agree with the prior administration that it's good to be able to have the feedback. That's my personal opinion. But the council voted last night, and it was a split vote of 3-3 to turn it into just a place for information, not comments. I had to break the tie. I voted to allow the comments to be there because I think that's very important. And Ms. Doty had some very good points about other cities where this has happened. It's caused lots of issues. There's some legal ramifications can be from that. And she made a very good point in saying that we may not all agree, but we shouldn't try to censor other people's comments and thoughts, and I totally agree with her on that. So again, I appreciate her coming forward with her concerns. We want citizens to do that. I encourage any of you out there that have similar concerns or other issues to please bring them to our attention. The best way we can handle and keep the communication going in the city is to address these issues. And so I was very happy she did that. Jeff, will you just speak to what you said about how to either do it as a just an information source or comments? And just so I just want everybody to be clear on what we were talking about.
Sure. Of course, we have the First Amendment in the United States, and that entitles people to the free expression. And when you open up your website to allow posting, then you can get posts from all manner of the public, and that's the advantage of it, that the city can get plus and negative comments. But even the Dispatch took down its comment thing because it gets out of hand sometime when people are nasty to each other, and there is some risk when you open up your website to let people on there to say whatever it is that they want to say, that they could say something that might be defamatory to another person. So I've advised the city about that. I've done it since I can remember. Even when Jeffrey Rupp was the mayor here, he asked me to speak to an MML class on social media and the right of the First Amendment. So you really have two choices. You open it up and you don't delete anything if you open it up, because then the government has no right to regulate the speech that way. The other option is to make it completely static, where all you do is people can come to your site and find information out. That's probably not that great of a way to proceed, because people aren't likely to come to the site unless they think they can say something. So that's the push-pull that the policymakers decided on, and I respect the decision to allow the comment. I wanted the council to understand there are some risks with it.
Thank you, Jeff. Yes, Joe Dillon has worked for many years for the city in helping to get this information up, guys. That's not an easy task. It's not an easy task to keep especially since the pandemic's been going on, to have these meetings where everybody can hear all the time. We try everything we can to make sure that these are recorded, that you can go to. There's another site we've got it on
YouTube and Facebook.
YouTube, Facebook, but then also there's a channel.
Yes, sir. On channel 57 on Sparklight.
Yes, channel 57 on local cable. So it's never perfect, but I promise you we're going to strive to be as good at it as we can. One of the things that the council pointed out last night would be good when we have our new IT person hired, that they can be a backup for Joe on these types of things that can happen on social media. I know when you get up here and you try to make all these excuses, it just sounds like you're making excuses, but I can tell you from my heart that this is the truth. We are trying to do this the best that we can. I have never, nor would I ever ask anyone to take anything down. And I am appreciative of people going to the mayor's Facebook page to gather information. We obviously post things because we want the citizens to be aware. We want to be transparent. We want to do all that we can to be as helpful to the citizens of the city as we can. That's our number one goal. So if anybody else has questions or concerns about that, please bring it to our attention. All right, last night, Wagner Engineering, who is the engineering firm that the city council voted to hire to help us with preparations for our ARPA money and how we can leverage that and how we can best use it for the city, presented last night their first go-through of findings after visiting with me, the council, the Board of Supervisors, citizen input in Columbus, a variety of different people. We asked people to send their comments in, to notify us with any areas that they felt like the city should seriously consider using the ARPA money. The council had a very good back and forth, I think, with them. We also had Mr. Irby that was talking about dilapidated homes. He was very passionate about that. He's already been by this morning to talk to me about it again. I am thrilled that there's so much conversation about how can we best use this for the citizens, because this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I've talked to some members of the Board of Supervisors already this morning where they had told us that, as we kind of suggested last night, that the ask may be a little high, and they understand that Wagner is still learning the ropes of Columbus and the politics that play in. But our number one goal is to use this money where it has the largest benefit for our citizens long term. We want to try to find every way that we can to leverage the money. There are, certain areas that we can focus on, as they pointed into last night, where we could get the most bang for the buck. However, there are other priorities within the city that require careful consideration. One of that is the council did vote to set aside a certain percentage to consider for merit raises. Merit raises? No. Premium pay, premium pay. And that is definitely still on the table. It was not indicated last night in the proposal that they had, so they're going to come back with that. They did have in there possibly paying $400,000 in salary to the police department. I again stated on both of these issues that it concerns me about using one-time money, but that's just my opinion. And I respect everybody's opinion on it, and I feel at the end of the day, the council will make a wise decision on how we can best use this money. In the meantime, while we're working on it, I encourage citizens to give us their input on it, ask us the hard questions, give us their advice, their thoughts. I have scheduled conversations this afternoon with folks from Wagner, so there'll be more information forthcoming on that.
We'll post their presentation today too, Mayor.
Yes, we can post their presentation, yes. And I really encourage folks to get in touch with us about this and give us their thoughts and ideas. Last night, the council voted for me to begin negotiations with Worth Thomas Consulting out of Jackson to potentially be a lobbyist for the city. I am happy to tell you I've been in touch with them this morning, and we're trying to set up an afternoon phone call. If we can't make it work today, we'll be talking the next day or two about how we can potentially hire them as consultants. We were very appreciative of them coming in last night. They do have connections in the Columbus area, some experience in working with us. We had two other lobbyist groups that contacted us. We didn't reach out to anybody. They all contacted us, which I was not surprised, but very pleased that they heard about us so quickly. I believe that the city could benefit from a lobbyist. Where we are now is trying to determine what that would cost the city. And so I will be gathering information from the consulting group that the council decided on last night, and then I will be reporting back to them to determine how we move forward on this. We also discussed the hiring of a COO last night. We have a finalist in that spot who we are going to try to have visit either tomorrow or Friday to interview with the entire council. And so we're looking forward to that. We're also checking references on this candidate at this time. That's where we are on that. We had a candidate that we were considering for CFO, and they had also been a candidate as COO. And we had a Zoom interview with this candidate, and they had been to Columbus for a interview with the search committee. Since our last meeting with them, that particular candidate has pulled out. So we will be discussing with the hiring committee how to move forward on that. We do have other resumes and applications for CFO, so we'll be looking at that very quickly. Another thing that the council has talked about is potentially hiring an accountant or someone to come in and try to help us get to where we need to be with our books. We've been using volunteer help, and they've all been very great, but this process is, as you can see, is taking a minute. So we want to try to be proactive in making sure we have all the information correctly about our finances, and also be in the best shape for whoever we eventually hire as CFO to help them to be in a position where they can hit the ground running. So we're being very proactive in that. What that could potentially mean is talking to an accounting team that we could potentially, it would be like, hiring them, temporarily. And what they would have to do is come back with a cost, then go to the council, see if the council agrees with that, and potentially move forward on that. Those are all things that are still being discussed. Let's see, what other fun items did we? We went into executive well, let me say this one. This might be a good one too. City Marshal. That's been an interesting topic of late. We discussed it thoroughly in the city council meeting, but I'm happy to do it more so. What we ended up doing in executive session is the council voted to table the issue for further discussion. What I will just say today is that the intent of a city marshal was not to do anything to cause problems within the police department, but to enhance the police department and enhance our relationship with the sheriff's department. But most importantly, to have somebody that was focusing on the serious crimes that we're facing, the violent crimes in the city. It's not just in Columbus, it's all over the country, it's all over the Golden Triangle. But my concern, the council's biggest concern, is our city, obviously. As I stated last night, I have citizens coming to see me, calling me on a regular basis. And they're, in some cases, pleading for help. Some of the issues that we have faced, and the police chief has talked about this publicly, is getting information from citizens to help solve the crimes and help prevent the crimes. We're hoping that if we're able to get this position, that can be a focus area too. Also a liaison with the school. There's a lot of big issues that we need to tackle in the police department, but those take big money, and we're going to work hard to get there. My idea on the marshal was something we could do quickly. It would be my suggestion was to hire somebody that we already have as an employee and increase their salary slightly to a higher level because of the added responsibility that this would bring. It would not be a burden on the budget because the money is already there. The money that we would add to that salary is already in positions that we have open, and we have quite a few in the police department right now. We only have 48 officers on the street. So what I want the police department to hear and our officers, that this was not an attack on them in any way or what they're doing. I don't know, there are very few people who would be willing to sacrifice the way that our police force does. It is obviously an underpaid, thankless job in many ways. However, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't always be looking at every way possible to help them do their jobs better. And sometimes when a new idea comes up, it's hard for everybody to get on board immediately. I apologize again to the media and to others for not being able to talk about this. in the beginning. There was no, there was nothing sinister about it. It was me trying to find the best way to approach this idea and do it properly with the council, and with, it also involved a employee that we already have, and so you always want to be sensitive to that. This whole issue that we have with open meeting policies, laws, they're very important, but they also can be, they can make discussions difficult at a municipality level. I'm new at this, but one of the things I want to try to do is follow the law and do this correctly. And so I try every day to communicate with the council the best that I can and not run awry of those rulings. Some people say, oh, it's easy, everybody does it, this kind of thing. Well, that's not true. Once you're sitting in the desk and trying to do the work, it's, it can be, and Jeff can attest, I drive him crazy trying to determine how best I can do each of these things. I want everybody to know, from the police chief to the police officers, to all the citizens, those who are in favor of this and those who are against it, I just want to have this discussion, see if this could potentially work. The position, if is approved, would be an at-will position. It would not be a position like our employees with the fire and police right now, where it's guarded by the civil service. And so if we tried this, it didn't work, we could dispatch with it. There's a debate over whether our charter requires this. It states in the charter that you shall. However, that's room for, obviously, discussion and debate. The charter was written in 1820. So, it's not perfect, but it's there. Again, this was not meant in any way to be anything but positive. But when you're doing something like this, it can come across as otherwise. So I was grateful to the council for tabling it. That's not a guarantee that it's going to happen, but it's just at a point where they're going to consider it and discuss it, and that's what I was hoping for. It was not my intention to necessarily have it passed tomorrow. This is a big step. It needs to be, you need to look at it closely, you need to analyze it, you need to think it through. The statement has also been made that how could you be considering somebody when it's a brand new position and you haven't advertised for it? Let me state again, the city policy is this in our handbook. It says we may advertise for positions. It doesn't say we have to. Generally, we do. You want to go through that process. But all state organizations, municipalities, they all have different policies, but there are situations where a decision can be made to hire someone internally into a new position or hire someone externally into a new position. It can be done. We've done it before. It's not a regular policy that we take, but again, as tonight, these are unusual times that we're in. Again, there's always been crime. There's always been, and it's everywhere. Columbus seems to get the finger pointed at us more, we feel like, when it's happening across the country and across the area. And one of the things that I've been trying to do since I've been in office is to think of ways with the resources that we have now to try to combat this. That's where my interest is, and my interest is only in that, is keeping our citizens safe. And this idea came to me from a citizen who was looking at the charter. And it's not a controversial person. It's somebody that everybody, I think, mostly knows and thinks a lot of. So we looked at it, and I'm always open to new ideas. And as I told the council last night, I'll always bring it to them. And if they determine that it's not the best move for the city, I will understand. I won't be angry, and we'll move forward. But I feel strongly that this is something we should consider. I feel strongly that the person that we've identified could make a difference. And again, if it doesn't work, we could always move away from it. I apologize again to anybody that was feelings were hurt or were insulted by it or feels like it was frivolous or a waste of money. To me, that's not the case. And I will be happy to sit down with anybody in the community who would like to come by and visit with me about it. And be happy to have somebody help me change my mind on it. But as of now, I'm I'm going to try to move forward with the council to heavily consider the position of marshal. All right, let's see. And with that, I will invite the city attorney up. We did go into executive session on some personnel issues, and I'll ask him to come up and report on that.
It was quite a long night, but anyway, the first item of personnel was we had an employee in the Public Works Department who got arrested for possession. And then as a result of the arrest, he couldn't show up for work for several days. And so the council voted unanimously to terminate the employee. The second employment matter was also a member of Public Works who called in saying he would be late. It was his second time he called in saying he would be late, but then he didn't show up at all. Council voted to suspend this employee for 8 working days. Then the third matter of personnel related to conduct in the fire department, and the council voted unanimously to suspend a member of the fire department for 9 shifts and demote him from captain to driver. And as the mayor already mentioned, where they tabled the city marshal discussion, and they also voted to go ahead and arrange the interview of the COO candidate.
Any questions on any of that?
Yes.
Are you able to give any more details about what this captain from the fire department what kind of misconduct he was found guilty of?
Did I not say social media policy?
No.
Social media policy violation.
Any more details, or is that?
That's all I want to say.
So it's 9 separate violations of social media policies in it, or?
No, they suspended him for 9 shifts.
That's right.
It was multiple postings that were looked at, though.
How long do 9 shifts, how long does that span in real time?
It's about a month
Month, okay.
With pay or without pay?
without pay. Yeah, a suspension with pay is like a vacation. So I don't think the council was favoring giving the guy a paid vacation.
Does the demotion change the pay?
Yes, he's going to have a lower rank, so his pay will be reduced going forward until he gets his rank back, if he does.
I have a question on city marshal, and this is a question out of my ignorance. I don't know the answer at all. City firefighters and city police officers are protected by the Civil Service Commission. I guess what's the statutory basis for having a full-time city law enforcement officer that is outside of that protection?
There's a Mississippi Code section, and I don't remember the number off the top of my head this morning, but it's a state statute, and it says in every town where there is a college for women, the police and the fire departments are covered by civil service. All the employees of the police and fire department, not just the sworn officers. And then when you look at our charter, Section 20 says there shall be a city marshal and a chief of police and a sufficient number of police. So in my opinion, the marshal, since he specifically mentioned separately from the police that he's not a member of the police department. Since he's not a member of the police department, he wouldn't be covered by the civil service statute.
Okay. So I have a couple of questions about the charter on the city marshal. Obviously, you know, there was a wide array of responsibilities for that particular person, and, you know, some of them were things that the city would not need because they've got those contracted elsewhere, like tax collection and constable duties and things like that. So where do you draw the line between what the city marshal shall do in the charter and what it won't be doing because those services are already contracted out to other places?
Well, I think what we did is what we're working on, and Jeff, you helped me with this, is that we were restructuring what the responsibilities would be of a marshal. If you look up,
To change the charter though, to
Mm-mm.
do that?
mm-mm.
Okay,
We haven't had a marshal, we haven't changed the charter because of that.
okay.
I don't know that we've ever had record of ever having a marshal. I'm assuming we did maybe back in 1820, but I don't know. So we are trying to work within the law that is set out by the state of Mississippi and our charter to bring in the position of marshal. As I said in my statement yesterday and in the information that went to the council, this would be focused primarily on violent crimes because we have a huge uptick in violent crimes in the city of Columbus and around the nation. And it doesn't take you long to watch the news and you'll see that mayors all over the country are trying to be creative and finding ways to combat this. We don't have unlimited funds. We can't all of a sudden make raises happen. We can't do all the things that we would love to do. We're going to work towards it. One of the ways we're going to do it is when we get good people in the CFO position and the COO position is help us leverage all that through grants, all types of things. And, you know, somebody even said that we're talking about, one thing I hadn't mentioned yet, which is a hot topic, is that the committee is going to come back together to discuss the use of city facilities. When we were discussing that in one of the meetings, somebody said, well, if we've been charging like other municipalities do, maybe we'd have some of this money for raises. Because we've really been giving away a lot of uses of facilities. It would be great if we could do that, but that's just not reality. So what we're trying to do is create a position that would focus on violent crimes, try to be a liaison between the community to give information to help us solve these crimes and get people off the street that are doing it. Also help us find ways to prevent these crimes. We can't arrest our way out of these issues. It's got to be we've got to be full hands on deck trying to find ways to meet these citizens where they need our help through education, through job opportunities, all the things that you need in a community. However, we don't have the money to do all those things just yet. So in the meantime, we've got to use every creative resource and possibility that we have to try to bring, and as I said last night, if it saved one life, to me, it would be worth it. I can't tell you how frightened our citizens are. I've had meetings with our police department, with business owners across this city, asking how they can help to curtail the crime. It's a big, big issue. It keeps me up at night. Every time I hear a siren, my body, I'm beginning to recognize the difference between an ambulance, a fire truck, and a police department and the sheriff. I'm beginning to, because I just never know what's coming next. So I'm sorry that politics play into this. I'm sorry that, miscommunication plays into this. I'm sorry that, all the things that happen, because at the end of the day, the only reason for doing a position like this would be to help our citizens. And, the definition of an insanity is to keep doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. So, I try every way I can, and I have a lot of people that, citizens, just everyday citizens who call me with ideas, and that's basically how this one came up, and I thought it was brilliant once I heard it. Then my biggest dilemma was, how do I communicate it? How can I talk to the council about it, sell them on it in the best way possible for the citizens? Well, then it leaks. Well, oh boy, here we go, and I understand that. But it just caused more confusion and more angst about it. Again, and I will say this again, the reason that I did not respond to the media, I was actually hiding from y'all in my office on a couple occasions, and pretending I didn't see your text messages, is because I really, really wanted to have an opportunity to talk to the council about it. But I understand the media's right to know and the citizens' right to know. What I'm just trying to explain to you is I'm trying to balance that the best way I can. And I'm going to make mistakes.
After the executive session discussion and, Councilman Beard is here as well to affirm this. Do you feel like y'all are closer to actually maybe doing this or farther away?
I wouldn't say either one, because we didn't talk about it that long. I think we were, you know, I think that, I hope that there's some consideration for it, but I'm not gonna put any, I'm not gonna put anything out there that's, you know, not true. I think they are reading it, and they're gonna make the best decision they think they can for the city.
Is that your take, Councilman Beard, if you don't mind my asking?
You wanna come up here, Councilman Beard?
Oh, no, I'm still on it. Yeah, I'm looking at it, I can't speak to nobody else, but I personally, I'm looking at it, going over it, and speaking with who I need to speak with, you know, about it. Like I stated yesterday, I mean, it's pretty much self-explanatory, but then everything has a different way of getting to that same self-explanatoryism, so, yeah. It just came, we just got it, so I gotta look at it, I gotta research it.
And I think that's very fair. They shouldn't, and I said last night that, you know, it would have been great if we could have passed it, because I've already convinced myself, I've had several weeks to try to figure it out. They have not, so I didn't expect it to be passed last night.
On the subject of the hiring, two questions there. On the CFO, or really, on the CFO specifically, but really broadly on that whole search, we've gone from scores of candidates to now then you've got one for COO, and then the well seems to be empty for CFO right now. How did that happen? And on the CFO in particular, you know, where do you go from here? I know you glanced over addressing that, but specifically, where do you go from here on trying to get a CFO?
Okay. Let me take that from the beginning. Was that to Pierre or to me?
That's what I was asking.
Both of you are on the hiring committee. I'm interested in anybody who wants to answer.
Do you want to go first, or? Okay. I want to be clear on a couple of things, because there was a information in the newspaper about my original plan for this. The newspaper stated that I wanted to combine the two positions. That's not true. What I wanted to do was restructure them. And I put together job descriptions for that. I wanted to hire a COO or CAO that had more of an accounting background. And I wanted to try to find somebody who had actually worked in a municipality and done this work. To do that, I felt like we needed a higher salary. So I was requesting that we bump it from, I think the high on it now is 79. I had suggested, I think 80 to 120 is a range. The CFO, I had changed to what I was calling Director of Finance, which would have been an accounting position, and I was lowering that salary from what had been for a CFO. But again, in that job description, we wanted somebody that had, you know, experience in accounting, in budgeting, and hopefully in working in a municipality or a business or a county that was similar to what we had here. And my idea was to have those two positions working closer together. Right now, we're set up where the CFO and the CFO report separately to the mayor. My idea was to have the CFO reporting to the COO to me. And then that way we could, I felt, communicate to the council better, be more proactive in having information that the city needed. I thought both positions could be more proactive in working with department heads and setting budgets, expectations, long-term management plans for infrastructure, for capital, all those things that we need to do. That's all a lot of work. And so I was hoping to bring those together. The council decided, and I think one of the reasons was because this seemed to be dragging on with interims in place, to go ahead and put it out there like we had before, with the two positions and the salary ranges. So we ended up getting quite a few applications, but they were from all over. And with the world we live in now with COVID, some of these people that applied didn't want to relocate to Columbus. They thought they could do it from the state they lived in. right? So in the process, we had to weed that down. That takes some time because we have to run the city on top of doing this. Our interim positions are just that, interim, and they are spending less and less and less time here. So that means the people that are here in the building, and we've had to fill other positions too, which has caused, it makes it harder to catch these people, you know, get them lined up, find a time when the search committee can get together and look at these things. So it's not moved as quickly as we would like. But that's not been intentional. That's just been where we are. So when we started looking at the applications and our HR director was able to weed out the ones that didn't meet the minimum qualifications, we started looking closely at the folks that had applied. The search committee has spent countless hours going over and over these resumes, doing research on the backgrounds of the people. They've worked hard to get us to a point where we had some candidates that we thought were qualified for the position and would be willing to move to Columbus. We also wanted to find people that we thought would fit the dynamics of Columbus, obviously. And so the first time the committee met all together, and correct me, Pierre, if I get any of this wrong, each person narrowed it down to the top 3. And then we came back and we discussed those. And then we picked a top 3 for COO and a top 3 for CFO. We had one person that we thought could do either or. There were some members that felt strongly that person could be the COO, and even though they were originally in the CFO batch. And it was somebody that we had reached out to that we had heard about, who had not originally applied, but once we reached out to them, said yes, they're interested. So then we narrowed it down, the COO and the CFO, we narrowed it down to 2 candidates that we thought were very good candidates. One had more experience than the other. And so the debate within the committee was which one could do which job best, and if we were going to increase the salary, which one would it be, CFO or COO? One of the candidates in their interview said that they had suggested to us that we combine the positions because of their experience and hire them, and then when they came in, they would help us find a CFO. And so we looked at that scenario. We looked at adjusting the original job descriptions. If y'all were tuning in at the work session last week, we discussed that with the city attorney, how we could potentially do that because we didn't want to discriminate against anybody or cause somebody to say, well, you switched up the job descriptions and all that kind of thing. We basically thought we had 2 potential candidates that could be really good for the city. Now, y'all been asking for their names. I asked them in the process, would they be okay with us releasing the names? And these people were already employed and had not talked to their employers at that point about it, so asked us not to do that. And the hiring committee felt strongly that we should not let that information out until we had. So that's kind of where we've been on that. And so now, on Monday, the candidate for CFO, potentially COO, withdrew. So now we're down to 1 candidate that we're going to bring in on Thursday or Friday. We're checking references now. We've done the background check, that's cleared. Going to bring them in to meet with the entire council to make a decision on that position. Where we are today on CFO is looking through the list again and deciding on what the next step is going to be on that. And I would determine, Councilman Beard, probably when the selection committee gets back together, we'll determine what the next steps are on CFO. Looking at the names we have already and potentially maybe trying to get other applicants. Does that sound fair?
I mean, I know it's a lead, I guess.
Yeah, come on up.
Not Tracy. Originally, when we decided to go, it started off as 3. The motion was made through the council to bring 3 people back to the council for a public interview. So we did, after we looked over and we was like, okay, well, it was hard to pick just 3 because there was so many qualified for
CFO, and IT director. COO, it was not as many people that were like superb that just stuck out. So we did pick 4 people for the COO position. And out of those 4 names, one of them did, apply. He crossed on both of them. So we did meet with him. We did meet with all of the 4, the Zoom. We did the personal interviews. And I guess, I don't want to say, I guess it was like it took so long. And, people would they say that they have other job offers at other places. Like he did say, some people did not want to relocate to Columbus. But the COO, I'm strong. I feel comfortable with that position. I feel like that person would do a great job. I mean, she has this person that y'all got the name yesterday. I don't know if y'all figured it out, but I seen it in the paper already today, the name. So that person she's awesome. Like I say, I met with her. We met with her multiple times during the interview process. But the CFO candidate was just as awesome. But through strenuous research and different things like that, some things came up about this guy. And I feel like, I did let them know that the news media in Columbus, they will basically give you a new direction of life to travel. So I think he kind of like took that and, just decided to leave. But when you have these people coming in these positions, you should not let them know. Well, you should let them know at literally everything, the possibilities that they are getting themselves into before they take a position in that, in that capacity. So I feel very strong about the COO position. Like I say, there are multiple people on the CFO list that we can go back and interview that has the qualifications that meet the criteria that we all like. It was just so hard to narrow it all down to 3 to 4 people, but IT director, there is, oh my God, multiple people that can fill that position today. And I know the mayor was asking about cybersecurity, and a lot of these people actually have cybersecurity background, cybersecurity, degrees and different things like that. So we didn't put as much emphasis, as much focus on that because there are so many people literally in Columbus that has those qualifications for the IT director position. But CFO, I don't feel like it would take a longer amount of time because we still have people, but if we have to reopen that process, I mean, we actually need someone that can do the job, that can fill that position, that can catch up to all of the things that we are lacking in. So it has to be a strong person. And the person that we did have, I will say this, I liked him a lot. He was a very, very, very strong 30 years in the game with accounting experience. I mean, all of the whole 9 yards. I liked him. I hate that he dropped out. So if he's listening, I hope you, decide to.
Well, I've got 2 more questions. That's all I have. I want to address, first of all, Councilman Mickens' motion. It did pick up a second from you, and then it just kind of disappeared. I don't know what happened with that. But in that open session, 1, he mentioned Jamie Garrett. Who is that? Now that name has been said out in public, I feel like it's fair to ask who that person is. And secondly, he also mentioned as part of that motion or as an addendum to that motion that he wanted a CFO by the 15th. Is that a reasonable timeline?
It's very reasonable. If we can meet and like he stated, the meeting was the number one thing about getting together. If we can meet, we can definitely, get it drawn down within 2 weeks.
I mean, do you agree with that? Do you feel like getting a CFO hired by the 15th is
That
reasonable?
would be fantastic. I may not be quite as optimistic as Pierre, Councilman Beard, I should say, sorry, Councilman Beard. But I agree with him. There's some potentially other people in that group. I also, the council has talked about, as I mentioned earlier, hiring some accountants to get in here. We got a lot of issues up there that we have to deal with, and we want to try to make it the best environment possible. And let me say this again: we've had some wonderful volunteers that have, because of the love of the city, have been helping us limp through this process, and I can never thank them enough. And that to me shows the kind of support we have in this city of people who would volunteer their time to do this. And they've been very professional, and we couldn't have done it without them.
Miss Garrett.
I'm not giving anything on her. I don't think her name should have been released. If you want to research her, you're welcome to do it. I'm not giving you anything because I have not had permission from her to do that.
In fact, she asked not to.
She did. She asked not.
I didn't say.
I know you didn't. I don't think the vice mayor realized that when he said it. So.
Going back to
CFO came and did say release his name.
We could have, but we
We're
didn't.
not gonna do that either.
Thanks, Councilman Beaver.
Mayor Gaskin, going back to the city marshal issue, you mentioned giving members of the city council time to react and process the proposal as you laid it out. After hearing some of the concerns from city council members and especially from Chief Shelton, how has that changed your kind of view of how the position should function, and do you anticipate incorporating any of that going forward, kind of learning as you go?
I respect everybody's opinion and thoughts on it, no doubt about it. And to be fair, which I mentioned earlier, I feel like I got a chin strap on. I've had a lot more time to mull it over and think about it and study it than they have. I was unfortunate that I think, to my opinion, that the chief was called up in open session to talk about that. He and I had a very different conversation from what he said that night. All the documents that he passed out to the council I had never seen. But I understand as I said last night, he's in a very stressful position. And it's not going to affect the way that I work with him at all. I was shocked a little bit by it. But I also understand he's under a lot of pressure. And so I had told him in the meeting, and Jeff was in the meeting with us, that if he had any issues with this at any time to call me back, let us know before we went forward with it. I didn't hear back from him once. I didn't check with him. I probably should have. But I thought it was very clear, and you can ask the chief about it, that if he had concerns of any kind, and he had a few when we first talked about it, but nothing major. But I told him that day, it was last Friday, I said, you need to mull this over. And so obviously he had talked to somebody, but not me. But again, I don't fault him for it. He's the chief of police. He would remain the chief of police if this position were filled. Again, I talked to him that day that we were doing this as a way to be supportive of him and helpful from him, because he and I have conversations about the stress and the pressure he's under. I've been trying to find ways to help do that. I thought this would be that. I still think it would be. I'm happy to talk to the chief more about it if he would like. And again, I'm not angry with him in any way. It's not going to affect our relationship at all. But his presentation last night was a 360 from the conversation that he and I had earlier.
Are there any concerns, and obviously this is also going to be a question for the chief, but something that jumps into my mind is the issue of chain of command when you have CPD detectives investigating some of these violent crimes that the city marshal would be overseeing. Is there any concern about confusion about who reports to who in terms of...
Well, there shouldn't be any confusion about who reports to who, because everybody in the police department reports to the chief of police only. The chief of police reports directly to the mayor. The marshal position, if it's approved, will have no one working underneath him. But the marshal would not report to the chief of police. It would report to the mayor. The person that we have in mind for this, I think, would be ideal because they already have relationships with the police department and other law enforcement in the community. I had that discussion with the chief. I had the discussion with the chief. Did he have anybody else in mind that could potentially do this? We talked about a couple names, but we went back to this name saying, yeah, that would be the one that could do it. I don't know what changed his mind between Friday and what was yesterday, Tuesday, but he did not talk to me about it prior to the meeting.
Can we get a clear answer on that? stated, I don't know if you answered it, but he stated like, you got investigators and detectives already working on major crime.
Mhm.
And then if you bring in a marshal, and you already got these, say for instance, a shooting occurs right across the street at Domino's. Now we have a marshal, we have investigators. So who would pick up that? And if these investigators pick it up,
Yeah.
then how would,
Right.
what's the?
Well, I mean, you know, that would be, I don't see that as difficult as some might. And when I was talking to the chief and I've talked to the sheriff about this, I didn't get that impression from them at the time either. However, you're welcome to go talk to both of them to do it. What, as we stated in the thing, the description is that it would be the priority of the marshal to work on violent crimes.
So you'll be deleting
No.
the investigators?
No, not at all. Not at all. There's many, many different crimes that the investigators and people are working on. What we would do is we would have somebody that is focused on those crimes, also trying to get evidence and talking to people. It would be a way for them to focus on the violent crimes, keeping the others in the loop, but the marshal's focus would be violent crimes, whereas the police chief is looking over all of.
So we couldn't just actually advance this person within the police department to an investigator?
We could do anything, yeah. But what we're trying to do is, and I go back to this, and there are people who are debating me on this, whether that would happen, is, and the police chief has told me this too, people in the community are hesitant to give information to the police department because of leaks and information getting out or going over 911. The chief has said that. He's said it many times, trying to get people to call in. We believe the person that we're talking about could potentially help get that information. I mean, is it going to walk in and be perfect? No. But obviously what we're doing right now isn't working, right? I mean, I'm not faulting anybody for it, but the crime's not going down. People aren't giving us information. People aren't going to jail. So all I'm asking is to try something a little different. But again, I understand change is hard. People are human. Anytime there's another position or something, people feel threatened or whatever, insecure. I get it. I'm focused.
I don't think it's insecurities or threat. I just feel like it honestly, in my opinion, it's a big contradiction to what's already in place. I understand, that we stated that the charter, the ordinance, or whatever states that we shall have a marshal, but the same duties that we will be given to this individual is basically the same duties that people within these departments already have. And then if you, like I say, if you tell someone that this is now their role, and then you take this role from these people, that's gonna be a huge disconnect. Because now, if we have a bulk of violent crimes, and now we have, 7 investigators that are investigating, 7 or 8, and now if you're saying, we don't want you 7 or 8 people investigating violent crimes no more, we're gonna only give it to one person. And if we have 9 violent crimes a week, that's 36 a month. How can we give one person 36 things to handle when it was already hard to split among 7 or 8 people?
Let me try to break that down. Again, we're not taking anything away from anybody. Investigators would still be working on those crimes, on those issues. This would be the violent crimes, trying to cut down on violent gun use, all those things that we're dealing with. You may grow over time, you may grow the marshal's position to help in those areas. This is truly, and I would hope that we can do this in this city, is to be teamwork. This is to have somebody thinking above what the level of, and they're understaffed in all the areas. This position, I would ask you to think about how sometimes you bring in fresh ideas, you try a new thing, it inspires everybody to work together. Everybody's going to the negative immediately saying, oh, it's not gonna work together, you're foolish to think people are gonna talk to anybody with a badge. I mean, it's just all this no, when I'm saying we got an opportunity to try.
I don't wanna say we're cutting you off, we just wanna have clarity and understanding of what's being created.
Right.
So now, my last question. If you say that the marshal will be deputized.
Yes.
So if there's a violent issue that happens within the the sheriff will have basically free range and leeway to come and go however often this marshal person feel that they have, when we can just open it back up.
I don't see it that way. I mean, I don't see that it would change any type of response. I would say that they would respond as they normally would. What this person would be taking the lead on the violent crimes. They would work with the police department and the sheriff's department. I don't think it's a secret that the sheriff's department and the police department don't always work well together. I think now we have a policy where if our police officers have to call for backup and they need it from the sheriff's department, before they can do it, the captains have to call the police chief, wake him up, and say, we want to call the sheriff's department for backup. That's not real popular with a lot of the police officers because sometimes they feel they need somebody faster.
But we can change that.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are obviously difficult issues and difficult topics. I'm not an expert in law enforcement. I don't think Councilman Beard is either. But we want to, and I understand every one of his questions and I appreciate it. We need to be asking the hard questions. We need to be looking at all the scenarios. All I'm asking is just not dismiss it out of hand without giving it serious thought and consideration. And then at the end of the day, it's very likely we won't do it. But it won't be because we didn't try to think about it.
Can I address Leslie, if you don't mind? She asked a question on Facebook.
Leslie?
Sorrel. She said, please explain, if there are so many qualified IT candidates, why has the council not filled the position? We haven't filled the position for IT because CFO and COO are more, we have people at interim basis on that. We have the IT director who is still here on a consultant basis, still doing the job.
It's not quite as urgent.
It's not quite as urgent. So COO and CFO are our number one priority, and I promise you, Ms. Sorrell, we're gonna find an IT candidate.
Yes, the IT candidate is very important too. Councilman Beard mentioned something that I've talked about. I'm very concerned about cybersecurity. And we have somebody in the room that can speak to that. Municipalities our size are easily under attack for that, and it could cause serious issues. That's something I think we need to do. One of the reasons that I wish we could move faster on it, I think I explained that earlier, is that the number of people we have on staff right now, all the issues that we're dealing with in the city. We're doing our due diligence. There's a process you have to go through for getting these folks cleared to interview. I believe that our HR director was talking to members of the search committee last night saying that we're about to move forward on the IT. Right. So you'll be here, don't you think we'll be hearing something about that?
I got my packet last night.
Oh, you did? Okay. They got their packet last night on the IT candidates. Thank you for the question.
That was the only question.
Is that the only one? Okay. Everybody, didn't we have fun? Thank y'all so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you, Councilman Beard. Councilman Beard is very good about supporting the press conferences, and I appreciate it.
Make sure you don't, get on the knowledge.